Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. For the record, today is Tuesday, June 23rd, and the time now is 1:05. Notice for this budget hearing was disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Tuesday, June 16th. Second was issued on Friday, June 19th. The committee will hear and accept testimony on Bill 282-35 LS, the Fiscal Year 2021 Appropriation Act, as requested by the governor, relative to the Mayor's Council budget, Fiscal Year 2021 budget request. Joining me today is my colleagues is Speaker Tina Munoz Barnes, and also the Vice Chair of the Mayor's Council. We have Senator Kelly Mars Taitano, Senator Will Castro, and Senator Jim Moylan. General rules for the budget hearing. The conduct of this budget hearing shall be as follows. Those testifying on behalf of the department or agency will be recognized by me, the chair, and the panel has been invited, which is Mr. Angel Sablan, the director of the Mayor's Council of Guam. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with a written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized. Testimony shall be confined to the substance. We're only talking about your budget and nothing else. My colleagues and to the panel. Individuals will be allowed to present oral testimony. Once you are done, you may be asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for the proceeding. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and or may be asked to leave or be escorted, removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and title for the record. At this time, I ask the panel from the Mayor's Council to rise for our Sergeant at Arms to please swear them in. Thank you, Sergeant Arm. I will now ask Mr. Angel Sablan to please provide testimony on behalf of the Mayor's Council of Guam. Sir.
Jesus Masik, Apade, Honorably Gehelu, Senador San Agustin, and Honorably Gehelu, Amdutori, Pomaluna, Senador. At the outset of my budget testimony and justification today, I just want to reiterate that the Mayor's Council of Guam is fully appreciative of the support you have given us and of the suggestions you have also offered in providing more services to our communities. You know what the mayors do and you know what they need to get it done. When it really comes down to it, all of you have always been receptive and attentive to the needs of our villages and always try to heed the call of our mayors and vice mayors. We thank all of you for your support and assistance for us, even if it's not a popular thing to do. We fully understand that all of us in the government must try to be resourceful with what we have. Our budget, as presented today, is straightforward and plain and simple. Our budget appropriation for FY20 was $12,744,287.
Mr. Sablan, I apologize. If you want, you can bring down your mask. You're the only one down there, and I think we have more than 6 feet distance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This is the farthest you've been from me every time I testify. For FY21, we are asking for $14,033,336, an increase of $1,289,449. This increase is not attributed to any request for more personnel, operational funding, or capital outlay. As you are aware, this year is the end of all mayors and vice mayors' 4-year term, and pursuant to Section 4109, Title 4, Chapter 4, Guam GCA, a lump sum payment of all accrued annual leave up to 320 hours is paid to all employees under the Mayor's Council of Guam at the end of the current mayoral term in January 2021. Otherwise, our FY21 budget request will be lower than FY20. The biggest item on our budget, as with all other budget requests in the government, is personnel. The 19 villages will comprise of 214 unclassified, inclusive of the 19 mayors and 7 vice mayors, That has actually increased to 224. The central office will have a total of 1 unclassified and 10 classified employees. There are 8 villages that have 5 gyms and are allocated 3 additional full-time employees above the 5 that are allocated to every village. The total amount for payroll, salaries, and benefits is $9,911,728. The other big item that we are requesting is an appropriation of $240,000 for the repair and renovation of our 12 senior centers at $20,000 per center. I'm happy to report to you today that that request of $240,000 is no longer necessary. The Office of the Governor provided $300,000 for the 12 senior centers in addition to the 3 adult daycare centers, which amounts to $20,000 for each of the 15 centers under our jurisdiction. A status quo request of $70,000 for daily operations, $35,000 for supplies and materials, and $35,000 for contractual services for office equipment, maintenance, internet service, printing services, and vehicle maintenance. As for utilities, a status quo request of $708,330 for power, $224,510 for water, $67,935 for telephones, which totals $1,775,000 for utilities. We do not anticipate to expend all these funds, especially in power, as we have already begun to change out many of our incandescent light bulbs to low wattage LED bulbs and have started replacing our inefficient sodium recreation field lights with LED as well. Except for these past 3 months due to the COVID virus, all these facilities are in daily use for the many sports programs that are either sponsored by the mayor's offices or coordinated by various leagues around the island. As for water usage, we do have various months where we see a spike in consumption, and these we attribute to undetected water leaks, medical car wash fundraisers, or used by residents that have no running water in their place of residence, and find the closest place to obtain water is at a mayor's office or recreational field. While we are aware that this is happening, we are also cognizant of the fact that those with children need water for bathing, cooking, and plain simple hygiene. While we realize that these actions add up to the cost of utilities, you would never find a mayor or vice mayor who would turn their back on those that truly need it. The office space rental fees for FY21 is estimated at $66,096, but may increase due to a new bid currently in active status with the General Services Agency. We recently requested to amend the specifications of our request to increase the square footage for our offices due to the current social distancing that may well continue until this fiscal year is over. At present, we can no longer hold MCOG meetings at our current office. While we have accessed the use of the Dead Row Senior Center due to its closure for senior citizen activity, we will not be able to access it once the senior center operations are back into normal operations. We will continue to do our due diligence to obtain a functional government office space for the central office of the Mayor's Council. In our operations funding, we've also requested $20,000 for the President's Contingency Fund and $20,000 for the Association of Mariana Island Mayors, Vice Mayors, and Elected Council Members for FY21. The districts do not submit individual budgets for the operation of their village functions, but are distributed by the MCOG based on the levels of appropriation approved by this body. The Street Maintenance and Beautification SMB funding of $932,423 as approved in FY20. We are requesting an additional $100,000 for FY21, but we defer to your judgment. This amount is divided among the villages pro rata on the 2007 Guam Roads and Pavement Inventory. The Department of Public Works, after an initial allocation of $20,000, which is determined by this body and made part of the budget. The District of Dededo gets the biggest share, while the District of Yamatic gets the smallest share. This funding is used by the mayor's offices for their office operations, supplies, contractual services, as well as for street maintenance and beautification. Please be cognizant, however, that these funds are only used for secondary and tertiary roads, and not on the routed highways that some people think these funds were allotted for. We are fully aware that the villages all vary in land size. Jigo, with 35.41 square miles. Dededo has 30.56 square miles. Inarajan has 18.85 square miles, even though their populations all vary. The one-size-fits-all distribution of funds does not seem fair or justifiable to the larger and more populated villages of Dededo, Jigo, Tamuning, and Mangilo, or the bigger land areas like Jonia and Inarajan. This has been a bone of contention and an area of debate for many years, and you hear me every year come back to you and to previous legislatures to see we can get this resolved. In fact, why do we continue to use a roads pavement inventory by the Department of Public Works, which is now more than 12 years behind the times? The Public Safety and Social Education Program, PSSEP, funding of $375,174 in FY20 is again requested for FY21, although we did ask for an additional $100,000, which again we leave up to your judgment. The island-wide beautification projects, IWVP, funding of $423,829 as approved in FY20 is also requested for FY21. The additional request of $100,000 we leave up to you. The limited gaming fund, though not part of our FY21 budget submittal, is deliberately left that way, as it is this body that will determine the 33% of the available funds collected in FY20 that we made part of the Mayor's Council FY21 budget. As you are aware, these funds can only be used for the purposes set forth in Public Law 34-42, Section 2. We are also very fully aware that the limited gaming fund will probably be much less this year or for the next fiscal year due to the inactivity of bingo halls and game rooms around the island. The EPA Recycling Revolving Fund was last appropriated to MCOG in FY18, and we are requesting consideration to again make an appropriation directly to the MCOG so that we are not in the waiting mode for GIPA to release funds to us. At this point, to update you, we do have a $400,000 approval from the Board of Directors of Guam EPA to be used by the MCOG. We started this before COVID. COVID came, and the MOA EPA was closed, so the MOA was just approved a couple of weeks ago. That MOA is now with the Attorney General's office, waiting for his approval. Once that is obtained, it goes to the Governor's office for her signature, which she has assured us she will do immediately. That $400,000 will be used for the rest of this fiscal year to remove junk vehicles, white goods, green waste, tires, loose metals, up to September 30 of this year. Senators, this is our FY21 MCO budget, simple and straightforward. As I mentioned earlier, if it was not for the request to include the lump sum payment for the mayor's staff at the end of this term for the mayors, our budget request would be less than what we received in FY20. And in the spirit of accountability and transparency, I would like to apprise this body of other funds under our purview that are not appropriated into the MCOG budget. The senior center operations are 12 centers. The adult daycare operations, the 3 centers. Together, it amounts to more than $1.6 million. There's 19 unclassified employees with the senior centers and 35 limited-term employees with the adult daycare operations. The end date is September 30, 2020 for both operations, and we have not been given any notice by the Department of Public Health and Social Services, Adult Division of Senior Citizens, that we will not be continuing the operations. We request for a provision in the FY21 Budget Act to allow the Mayor's Council of Guam to carry over all unexpended lapsed funds for use in any category except personnel in FY21. and the verbiage is there in this testimony, which is usually made a part of our budget. One concern that I do have, Senators, which you do not see here, is that for the past few fiscal years, the appropriations made to the Mayor's Council of Guam comes from the Territorial Highway Fund and the Tourist Attraction Fund. I've been reading stories about the Tourist Attraction Fund not being able to get the revenues that it usually does when we're in full operation of tourists. So I'm really concerned as to where is the Mayor's Council of Guam going to be funded from this year. As you know, there's always criticism that why are the mayors being given money from the Tourist Attraction Fund? Why are they being given money from the Territorial Highway Fund when that is not the purpose of those funds? I have other ideas there that I've asked and requested since previous years. The user fee schedule that can be used for our mayors and vice mayors, which we submitted actually 12 years ago, and I continue to mention at every budget hearing. I'll work with the Speaker this year to see if we cannot get that thing approved so that the mayors and vice mayors can actually use a fee schedule so that everyone can appropriately charge for the use of their equipment or their fields or their facilities. I have ideas there about how we can obtain vehicles from GSA or from other government entities that, like the autonomous agencies that annually change out their vehicles. We have not purchased a new vehicle for the Mayor's Council of Guam in over 6 years. And so many of their vehicles are already either costing us more money just to repair it and to upkeep it and maintain it rather than getting a new one. But because we understand, as well as all of you, that our government, really especially for this year, probably will not have the funding sources that we anticipated earlier in the year. We just want to be given an opportunity to see whether, I don't know whether it has to go to the legislation where we can ask these other agencies, whether autonomous or semi-autonomous, that the Mayor's Council be at least be on their top listing to refer these vehicles to. We are working with some agencies to apply for federal grants, like the Department of Agriculture for our stray dog and our feral pig program. We're working with USDA. We're working also with different agencies to see whether we can provide internet services and computer services at our offices, especially during this time when many of our people are asked to go online to apply for this program or that program, and many of them do not have that capability. So we're working with trying to obtain a grant to at least have Wi-Fi services available to residents that come to the mayor's offices to be able to fill out their applications or obtain their mayor's verification or what other forms they need that are required by other agencies. As I had mentioned last year, FEMA has actually approved for us to repair some of our facilities damaged in typhoons past. But there is a catch. We need to come up with 25% of the $265,000, $299.69 for those repairs. On top of that, we need to provide for insurance, because once these facilities are repaired by FEMA and a typhoon comes along and it's damaged again, FEMA will no longer fund those repairs if there is no insurance for those facilities or those equipment. So I'm just asking if you can consider that as well, if there are any, which I know probably no additional funds to give out. And then we come to the fact that what came out to light this year is what do we do with employees that are asked to work during disasters? And we bring this up every year. While the mayor's offices and our office were all closed during the start of this pandemic, our employees continue to come to work every single day. Up to now, they are still helping delivering food to the Manamco, going out and setting up testing sites for public health, going out and obtaining prescription or food from various stores that the Manamco asked them to go to. And while we don't stomp our feet or yell that we want the extra pay, all we ask is that when you do give extra pay to classified employees, that you consider our unclassified employees as well. And I think they're deserving of it. But be that as it may, they still continue, even today, still continue to go out and do what they have to do, even on weekends. So I'll now be answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Sablon. I have a few questions, and then I'll comment in reference to your presentation. Will the Mayor's Council receive any COVID federal assistance? If so, how much and what for? Are they going to get anything from the CARES funding or any?
You did see the submission from the governor to the legislature on the use of COVID, the CARES Act funding. We were not included in that submission. We did bring that to their attention. The Chief of Staff, now the Acting Chief of Staff, did assure me that somehow they will include the Mayor's Council Guam in at least reimbursing us for the amount of money that we have already used for COVID funding related activities. The payment for the hazardous pay for our employees will not be coming out of the Mayor's Council, nor will it be reimbursed to the Mayor's Council, because it will be paid out of the public health grant that was given through the COVID funding. We were included in that one according to the governor's office.
You guys were included in that one?
According to the governor's office, yes.
Okay.
That amounts to the majority of our COVID spending.
Okay, when you get that officially in writing and you see the money in the bank, please advise us.
Well, as
All
of
right.
today, there is no money in the bank because nothing has been uploaded. We were told that there cannot be any upload of money from DOA because we were not in that original submission that was given to the legislature.
Understood. All right. In your current staffing pattern, you have 24 positions for 1 million. In your proposed staffing pattern, you also have 24 positions for 1 million. We're safely assuming that they're the same 24 positions that you wanted to fill. How do you plan, what are your plans in filling those vacant positions?
Well, if it wasn't for this COVID pandemic, we probably would have filled it already, Senator.
Okay.
But we are going to fill it this fiscal year.
You hope to get it filled. All right. What is the status on the street maintenance, beautification, island-wide beautification project, and the public safety and social education programs? Are you still maintaining them?
Yes.
Okay.
And as I mentioned earlier, we did request for a $100,000 increase in each of those, but we'll accept whatever status quo budget is for there.
All right. Okay, and I was going to make a comment about the Tourist Attraction Guam Highway Fund, but you made that comment already quite clear. I'd just like to state, number one, you've asked in one of your statement to, in some way or in some form, to maybe legislate that the employees of the Mayor's Council be included on any of the hazardous pay and stuff like that?
Yes, and we are fully aware that your bill includes them, and we're thankful for that.
Okay, but if you can, take a look at, if we can figure out a way how to be more specific just for you, for your group. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure we cover that. And I am in agreement with your last page when you talked about charging fees for documentation. Everybody charges. I'm just surprised you guys are not. But I only would ask that if you do charge, please keep us fully informed, because it's got to be recorded in the budget, what you're charging, what you're collecting, what is the history, and so forth. Okay, and then there was one more item that you mentioned here on your testimony. I think everything here is, it's actually, everything is workable. And yes, I hate to see the mayor's council thrown under the bus. We'll just take a look at how you're being funded, and we figure this out, because every government agency that receives TAF are going to get impacted. But we want to make sure there's a balanced impact across. Not more of you or more of them. No, it should be everybody should take a bite of everything. Nobody should be avoided just because there's nobody special other than the people of Guam. And that's how I would be approaching it. I would now like to also recognize other colleagues of mine that are here. We have Senator Luis Muñoz, we have Senator Therese Terlai, and we have Senator Telo Tairiwi. I will now ask the Oversight Chair of the Mayor's Council, Senator Peter Terlai, who's also joined us, to, if you have any questions, sir, and you'll be followed by Speaker Tina Muñoz Barnes. Sir.
Let me just repeat myself. Just a couple of questions, because, you know, the things that I'm going to ask you is in reference to my experience being a mayor for 12 years in Zona, and I know the bulk of the work in the villages, man, is overwhelming for the numbers of people that you have, that you carry as, I would say, permanent employees. And to kind of just reduce the workload for the people that are actually unclassified, but they're just like permanent employees. And what I usually do is I depend on contracting, employees. Do you have enough money to contract additional contract, employees? Do
To be
you
very
have that
honest
money?
with you, Senator, no.
Okay, so how much money do you have for and I guess because in 2020, on the budget bill, we did include the carryover for the Mayor's Council. And I have already talked to the chairman of budget to please allow the Mayor's Council to have that carryover. Yeah. But with that, how much money do we have on the carryover that you anticipate to?
Well, because of the fact that we spent quite a bit of our funds that were not appropriated for these COVID-related items, and keep in mind also that there's a new mayor in Jonia, and depending on whether or not he keeps all his employees or replaces them, that's a big chunk of lump sum payments that we will have to dole out this year, which again impacts on our budget. The resignation of former Mayor Jesse Bloss already impacted our budget because we had to pay him 50% of his retirement that amounted to over $17,000. And so that's not appropriated for this fiscal year. And so I don't foresee a big amount as far as lapse funds. And another thing, Mr. Chair, that I'd like to point out is even though we do have lapse funds, it cannot be used for personnel.
So how much carryover do you anticipate to? Because we wanna place that on the 2021 budget.
I don't have those figures right now, Mr. Chair, but
Give me an estimate.
$50,000.
Just 50,000 for carryover.
Estimate. And this is not just, but I said even if there won't be any left in personnel because we're going to use that up. We're going to be in the red. But as far as the other categories, I can say there'll be probably $50,000 that we can carry.
And I guess the chairman and the speaker knows about this, that the Mayor's Council need to do that carryover almost every year because, like when we start the following year, we save the money from the previous year and we buy heavier equipment.
Yes.
So that's one of the reasons why. And
And
Always
we're
try to make-
thankful because we get that provision, language in the bill every year to carry over. So we're thankful for that.
Yeah, but I don't know if the chairman can support me in this one. Is it on the 2021 budget?
Mr. Chair, Senator Pito, that's what we're looking forward to do. We're pretty much maintain the same program because it's, the mayors will always have to carry over. There's always a lapse between, unfortunately, election happens to roll that over. And if you don't have a carryover, you're almost running them broke just to start the year.
So, Mr. Director, it looks like you do have an increase of requests for fiscal 2021, additional increase of your funds. So may I ask this, what is the most important project that you have for the additional funding that you need to get to supplement the 2021 budget, aside from the lapse?
Well, there's that maintenance, Mr. Chair, of our facilities. The $300,000 given to us by the governor's office under the Compact Impact Funds is only for the senior centers and the 3 adult daycare centers. But there is nothing for the community centers, for the gyms, for the recreation fields, and many of our gyms are already really in need of repair. While there is some approval by FEMA to repair some of those that were damaged, like as I mentioned earlier, it requires a 25% upfront, which we do not have in our budget. And it requires also insurance to be taken out for those facilities. So yeah, the big chunk that we really need funding for is to upgrade and to maintain those facilities.
Because I know that the Senior Citizen Center, because I've been there a couple of times, and I know that you need to actually replace the whole watering system and the air condition at the Senior Citizen Center. So that's going to cost, you know.
Well, in this downtime that the centers are not in operation, that is exactly what we're doing. We are refurbishing and repairing as much of those centers as we can. The only problem is finding these contractors that are willing to do these things. It's sometimes a difficult thing to do. Find contractors that are all taken up by the military.
Thank you, Engineer. Keep up the good work, my friend, because you're doing great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Pito. Madam Speaker?
Sizuos Masi, Madam Chair, for giving me the opportunity to ask some questions and comment to Angel Sablan, the Executive Director. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your presentation about what the mayors and the Office of the Mayors do literally on a 24/, 7-day-a-week process. You spoke about in your presentation, Mr. Angel, about the user's fee schedule, and you noted that the submission of the user's fee as far back as 2008, and then you talked about the resubmission of it being on 2018. Can I ask if you had gone through the AAA process, after you have your public hearing process, it gets all recorded and heard and submitted, then it comes through here. So what happened in the last submission of 2018?
Well, we just used the reports from the original submission. We didn't think that we would have to redo this all over again because we were reading parts of the law that after 90 days, after you do that thing, either the legislature accepts it, adopts it, or rejects it. So back in Senator Frankie Shizaki's time, when this was submitted, it had all of those requirements for the user fee schedule under the AAA process. But nothing happened to it, and I remember speaking with you and I mentioning that since nothing happened to it in that legislature, do we deem it as approved? Because it's way over the 90 days.
Yes, if the documentation did come in before the law was changed, then after the waiting period of 90 days, then it automatically closes. But if I'm not mistaken, the 34th Guam legislature did change the provisions of the law and said that if it's not heard after it comes, after the AAA process and the legislature doesn't hear it or doesn't facilitate it through, then it dies. So I just wanted, that's the reason why I'm asking, is in the 34th Guam legislature, because if it happened any time before that, if the AAA process was adhered to and it comes to the legislature, based on the submission to the speaker and the legislative secretary, after a certain timeline, it automatically becomes accepted. But I'm just asking because you shared with me.
I will take a look at it, Madam Speaker, and we'll make sure that whatever is the latest current law that has to be followed, that we'll submit it that way.
Thank you. I appreciate that because that could literally help or boost your efforts, as a lot of the facilities within the villages are utilized. A lot of the centers, a lot of the gyms, a lot of the fields are utilized, especially as it relates to tournaments. I mean, not in the last couple of months, but...
And it's not that people do not want to pay users fee. They want to. In fact, the way that we are getting around it at the current time, this was at the suggestion of then OPA Brooks, is that take it as a donation and put it into your non-appropriated funds. So many of the mayors do accept the donations for people that want to make use of canopies or chairs or rent the gyms for parties or rent the community centers. So they do make donations. And by the way, those funds are accounted for, whatever donations come in. In fact, all of the villages, the ones selected by the OPA, are being audited right now for their non-appropriated funds.
Right, and that all goes through, that all gets reported to
Yes.
this August body also.
Yes, we do submit a report to you.
You did talk about we did talk about the carryover provisions and also the lapses that you guys want for a request for the carryover. And I know that it may not be a lot based on what's
But
happening.
it helps. It all helps.
It all helps.
Yes.
The other question I wanted to ask is, are there any, we hear that because of the Tourist Attraction Fund, that was also a major player. I know that in 2019, we talked about it being 1.46 million, 1,461,000, and then in 2020, you only had 295,000. That still is a big chunk of change. Knowing that the Tourist Attraction Fund will probably not be utilized or enabled to give the mayors what they want, is there a plan B that the mayors will work with to facilitate that? Because that's still a big chunk of change. Is there any grant opportunity, other grant opportunities that you're working with to try and do an offset? As I ask every agency that comes in here, there's CDA grants that are out there through the stimulus packages that have been afforded through the federal government for Guam. And I just wanted to know if anybody in the mayor's council or the committee, have they looked at any other grant opportunities that can help the mayors and their
Yes,
villages?
as I mentioned earlier, we are actively looking at whatever grants that are available out there, and we are eligible to apply for, we will.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I will also be affording Mr. Sablan the link up to the CDA and see what we can do to look for opportunities, because there are a lot of programs that you can template, and working with nonprofits also to get possible funding. So I'll hook up with you there. The other thing that I wanted to ask was, out of the positions that were not filled from the different villages, is that count been actively sought through? I mean, are you having problems with Department of Administration? What seems to be the holdup to fill those positions that are there for the mayors but have not been filled?
We don't have any holdup, Madam Speaker, with DOA. In fact, they are very efficient when it comes
That's
to
great.
processing our requests for filling positions. Mary is in our office, my deputy is a very, very account-minded person, so she knows that if she sees the bottom line is not going to be in the black if we continue to fill these positions right away. So what she would do is just tell me, sir, let's hold off on filling those positions until latter part of the year so that we can make sure that there are funds available, rather than to fill it right away in October, and then by the time January comes around, you have no more funding for the rest of the year for that very same position. So in that way, that's the delay, is we're just trying to time it so that we make sure that there are enough funds to carry on that person and pay that person to the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you, Angel. And one last question, Mr. Chair, if I may. You talked about the employees, at least the employees, getting the support from the CARES Act and working the hazardous provision and all that. You shared earlier that the acting chief of staff from the administration was supposed to assist. As of today, has there been any update as to what procedures will be put in place for the employees? I understand they too are the frontliners as it relates to providing the community the necessary, from food to testing, medical test site areas, and just everything that you do in the villages.
Well,
Has there been a
our
commitment?
employees are actually being paid the additional hazardous pay based on the governor's executive order. So those have been coming out.
Okay.
So we don't have any problems with that. The problems we do have is seeking the reimbursement for the equipment that we purchased for the sneeze guards, the opening of windows, and opening of through doors for where there'll be less contact with residents that come to the offices, the PPE equipment that we also purchased. We would like reimbursement of that because that came out of our current budget, which was not budgeted for. That's what I'm saying, that the Chief of Staff assured us that there will be money put towards the Mayor's Council of Guam to reimburse that fund.
And is there already a listing for that,
Yes,
Mr.
yes,
Angel?
yes, we
There
do
is
have a listing.
Do you know the amount, the projected amount? Maybe we could help follow through.
It's about, because we spent over $170,000 for PPE. We're asking for an additional $100,000 for the sneeze guards and the other social distancing materials that needed to be put in place. And then we're also asking for funds to reimburse for the fuel that we've used, because we've been delivering food to the homebound and to the Manamco, and these were not part of our original mission to bring these food commodities to. There was a contractor out there, but the contractor, to my understanding, also had their personnel tied up because either they're quarantined or they're not coming to work. So we just couldn't just let the food stay there. So we decided we'll deliver it. And so the mayor's office are using their own private vehicles or their official vehicles. And the official vehicles, we're just asking for the fuel reimbursement costs, and for the private vehicles, we're asking for a mileage reimbursement for those employees that use their vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Sablan, for that presentation. I really think that we can try to include that, and I know that if you can present us a copy, we can
Yes, I
continue to
certainly will.
facilitate and work with the administration to see how those reimbursements can be given to the different mayors that expended that. I think it's really important, as there has been resources provided from the stimulus grants to ascertain those kind of PPEs, those kind of services, and those fabrications of making these the protective gear that is needed to protect the services that you provide. So, Mr. Chair, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I think it's important that we follow through, and I will continue to be committed in working the paper trail through for the mayor's council.
Thank-
Suzuki Masi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Munya, do you have any questions, ma'am? And you'll be followed by Senator Kelly March Titan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wasn't ready for that. I'm usually last.
You came early.
Sorry, sorry. I was anticipating going last, but it's okay. I'll take it. I just have a couple of questions, Executive Director. So, where is how is the mayor's addressing the stray dog? Maybe you can just kind of enlighten me a little bit on that, and how are they managing that?
Well, that's a problem that it's actually been worked on and thought about and for many years. We're finally getting to the point where I think we're going to be able to do something. We are working with the Department of Agriculture. In fact, we signed off on a grant application that they have put in to be able to obtain more traps, just not just for the dogs, but for the pigs as well, and an additional personnel for them. So we have been even prior to COVID, been actively having meetings together. I think that there's been legislation that's been submitted to this body to be able to make the laws about the leash law and vaccination and licensing more stringent, so that there is a way to people be more responsible for their pets and for the pets that they don't call their pets, or it's their pets but they say does not belong to them, until we're there to pick them up and they say, where are you going? So we're working very well with the Director of Agriculture. And I think within the next month, you'll be able to see more things come out on trying to work with the stray animal and the feral pig problem.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm noticing, I don't know if I'm just noticing more of it because I'm not sure what the case is, but I am noticing a lot more stray dogs on the road, on the sides of the road, and sometimes even dead on the road. Another issue that maybe you and I both are aware of, because even just driving into Wistic Road, right, there's a lot of junk cars that are being left on the side, and I don't even understand why some of the residents even see that as an opportunity to put more junk next to it if they see a junk car. But what's the protocol for removal of a junk car with the mayors?
Senator, you and I pass that same road every day, and yesterday there was that Toyota van with 2 refrigerators. Today there's a Toyota van, pickup truck,
Yep.
and the 2 refrigerators.
Yep.
So overnight somebody planted that pickup truck with all your junk in the back of the truck with no tires. And the protocol there is actually we've asked Public Works to come and assist, but unfortunately Public Works does not have a location to put any of these vehicles. And during the COVID time, the recycling centers were closed. And now that we're back up and they're opening partially, we're having this MOA going around between us and EPA, where they've actually released a little over $400,000 to us. But that's right now at the AG's office. Once he signs off on that, it goes to the governor's office, and she said she'll sign off on it immediately. And then that money is available to us. We give a purchase order to each of the mayors to please. They have a whole listing already of where these vehicles are, where these washing machines and refrigerators and white goods are at, where are these tires at. So once they get their purchase order, I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later, because if it's later, we only have a couple months more to go until the end of this fiscal year, and then we're not going to be able to use it all. And because remember, even though the recycling centers are available to accept these items, there's not always the transporters to do it, because these transporters are also working for other projects, and so they cannot. And the other thing is, we can only use contractors that are permitted by EPA. So there might be 100 transporters out there, but only 10 may be permitted by EPA. So we can only use those 10 that are permitted by EPA. We can't use a company that's not permitted by EPA. So we already have companies that have worked with us before. We know who they are. They know the process. So actually, all they're waiting for is to get this purchase orders in their hands to be able to
So
start.
there is funding then to
There is
assist you to remove the...
$400,000.
Is that enough? I mean, it doesn't really seem
Well,
like it.
because of the time frame left in this fiscal year, there's no sense in putting more money into it, really, because we may not be able to use that 400,000 completely. But as I mentioned earlier in my testimony, the last time we got appropriated from EPA by this body for $2.3 million was back in FY18. And although we also did not use the entire $2.3 million, it did go a long ways to getting a lot of and more time to get the junk vehicles and the tires and the electronics, green waste and the white goods and the loose metals.
So there is a cost to removing this because you have to contract out the people who are going to transport it, and then to put it to where it needs to go to, there's also another cost there. So
the current rate for a vehicle that's brought to a recycling center is $150.
$150. Okay.
Yes.
So that's why I'm just looking around, seeing the cars, the abandoned cars on the road. Doesn't even seem like 400,000 is enough.
Yeah.
to-
Not for the time. Well, for the time frame that we do have left, probably is.
Okay.
Because you remember, we can only use it up to September 30.
Okay, so that's
And
basically
they have
all we're
also
waiting.
they've also mentioned to me that the board, at the time they approved the 400,000, also looking forward approved another 900,000 to be given to the Mayor's Council of Guam for the start of October 1st.
Okay.
So at least that one we can anticipate that there will be money available. Because if not, then we're just going to be waiting for them to decide. Because we're not the only ones that get money from the recycling fund. There are other entities that EPA is required to give some of these funds to.
Okay, so I guess that's really what my question is first of all, what's holding it up? And how can we get the money to you sooner? Because like I said, when people see a vehicle or other waste there, then they just see it as an opportunity to put more vehicles and more waste. And I think the sooner we address the problem, the better.
We will. You'll see it announced. Once we get the program going, it'll be announced island-wide.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Luis Munoz. Mr. Angel, before I ask Senator Kelly Marsh, in reference to, because the mayors have the authority to issue citations, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And they are aware that, and I know that most of them are aware, and they know how to identify a vehicle if the vehicle has an owner by going up to DMV, am I correct? I think it's pretty easy, right? They look at the license plate or the VIN number, most of us that own vehicles.
That's correct, Mr. Chair, but
You know what I'm leading to,
by
right?
the time they leave it on the side of the road, there's no more license plate, and they've scraped off the VIN.
Understood, but I know that, Mr. Sablan, Angel, Primo, you and I both know there's a VIN number in every vehicle. You cannot remove it because it's in the chassis. It's all over the vehicle. Number one, what I'm trying to lead to is that, as like some of my colleagues will say, it's an abandoned vehicle. It's not an abandoned vehicle, it's littering. That's $1,000. And I honestly believe that everyone that dumps their car on the side of the road needs to get fined. And I know that's not something that the mayors may want to do, but it's something that maybe the village mayor can refer it to revenue and tax and say, can you assist by issuing the violation, or EPA or somebody, because it shouldn't be the mayors tracking these owners, because they could live in another village, not the same village. Or it could have been a process of the failure to register the vehicle. And I'm only concerned about that, Angel, because I wanted to make it where you're not always chasing after owners, because you have a responsibility to clean up your villages. But you can't be chasing after the litter that came from somebody else. I just wanted to make that known, that if there's something that can work out with revenue and tax, police department, public works, because everybody pays what they call disposal fee or whatever we pay every year. That
And
should have
that's-
paid
and
to
that's
remove
the
the
catch-
vehicle.
And that's the catch, Mr. Chair, is they say every time I register my car, I pay for an abandoned vehicle fund. Where's that money going? Why do I have to be fined?
Thank you. And that's what I'm going to go after next or during our budgeting. Also, I'd like to recognize another two additional colleagues showed up, if I'm correct. I think I did recognize, okay, I have Senator Mary Torres and Senator Sabina Perez. I did recognize Senator Therese Terlai and Senator Tello. Okay, now we have Senator Kelly, and we're just going to work our way down the line to Senator Castro, Senator Munoz, and then we'll drop forward to Senator Mary, and then we'll go across. All right, Senator Kelly, ma'am.
Suzus Masi, Mr. Chair. And Suzus Masi for coming here, Executive Director, and providing us a pretty detailed outline of the needs as felt by the Mayor's Council. And what I really liked was that you have a section for cost-saving measures, some proactivity, and then even within the body of the letter, there are some cost-saving measures that the council is already working towards. And so those are really good to see. And of course, we always like that kind of proactivity. So with one of them, you were mentioning the switching out to LEDs, and especially this is a little beyond what I know a lot about, but I know a little about with the recreational field lights, that switching over to the LEDs can be a really large cost-saving measure. How far along are you in that process, and what's your estimated timeline?
Well, we're currently trying to change out the Chalampago Order, Jose Atoigui baseball field. We're also working, we already have the lights for the Maritzu baseball field. We just need to find a contractor to be able to have the high lift to change that out. We're trying to see whether we can request GPA to assist us. We've changed out the lights at the Tijan football field and the baseball fields. We're trying to look at the PD baseball field and the Jigo baseball fields for a change out. So we're working on them one at a time, because like I said, it's just a matter of getting the contractors to do it, and there's just not enough on island to be able to do everybody at one time.
Well, it's very good to hear of that progress. Like I said, I've heard that it's very much a cost-saving measure.
Yes.
And so that's good to hear. Has the Mayor's Council, have they looked at the idea of any solar energy?
We have. It's just that many of our facilities are not in the condition to have solar panels installed on their roof. So that's also another option that we have looked into.
I see, and that helps us understand that. And then I saw in the letter that you were mentioning the possibility of moving towards a new GIGO mayor's office. So maybe that's something that could go in line
Yes.
with rehabilitation or with building new offices, that is something that you keep in mind. And with the beautification work that you're doing, is there much focus on native plants and trees when you do that beautification work?
Yes. Every village has their village flower, and they do work. The only thing is, Senator, is when they concentrate on doing that, we have to find the personnel again to make sure they come back and irrigate these plants and water them so that they continue to grow. But many of the frustrations of the mayors that they find is when they plant these flowers, not long after they're gone. And that's why I mentioned here that people are more wanting to plant abandoned vehicles and refrigerators on the sides of the road instead of trees and flowers. Because when we do it for them, they take it. I don't know where it goes, whether they resell it or they plant it at their homes, but they're not there. But yes, mayors do actively try to find a way to beautify their village and clean around. not going off the subject, but one of the things I wanted to mention to Senator Luis is that these vehicles and junk cars, if you take a really good notice, aside from just on the side of the road, they're being planted right next to a bus stop. In almost every village on Guam, you're going to find an abandoned vehicle or refrigerators and washers, because you know what? They say, oh, the government's going to come clean this up and take it away because the kids are going to, the kids are not going to be around these things. So that's one of the things that they do now. But going back to the beautification, yes, in fact, the Give Us a Moment thing that's happening this weekend, the Mayor's Council of Guam and all the island village mayors are all deeply involved in that. They've all been picked up an area to clean and to support so that we can clean up our island. But yeah, some people I heard on the radio say, why are we giving the mayors $400,000 just to plant flowers? It is not just for planting flowers. There's other things that they use the money for in the villages. The sides of the roads have to be cut almost every week. Other beautification, that money is all inclusive. It's not just for planting flowers and trees. It's also for filling up potholes and things like that. So that money is all just one fund.
Well, and Sejus Masi for outlining some of that so that we can better understand what's going on in there. And, as you were discussing things, I think part of the important thing, because we have to continue having roundtables like we did earlier in this term and other efforts to tackle these issues, but that you're outlining patterns. And I think that's some of the value of having the mayors be involved, because you see it on the daily basis and you're noticing some patterns. And if we're going to tackle this, we're going to have to understand those patterns. So I do see value in that. With the discussion that you had about the feral pigs, the wild pigs, so again, it's good to see that proactivity. When you're talking about getting traps, we recently had that wild pig derby, and then it was given away as food. Is that part of your thinking about that program, that the traps would also become a food program so that it's kind of this more holistic?
Well, if we discuss it with USDA, I'm sure that it can be. I know that there is degradation that goes on the military bases for the feral pigs, but they are not given out to any of the mayors simply because of liability issues and they believe disease that comes from these animals. But the ones that are caught outside through the USDA traps, sometimes those traps can catch 30 pigs at one time, and so they're instead of going straight to the dump, we try to make sure that the residents are given the first opportunities to take it.
Yeah, I see that. Of course, it has to be the proper authorities involved, and we have to make sure that things are safe, but it can be a way of as you were saying in your letter about something else, kind of looking for a win-win situation where we're helping stem some of that erosion and some of that destruction and the pressure that they're putting on the forests and other things, as well as perhaps being able to augment our food situation as well. One of the things yesterday, we had a budget hearing with the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. And so I was really pleased to hear about the partnership where they're going to be having some I'm not sure how to term it, but some partnership with you where they will set up a computer, I think, and they're going to be able to do some telehealth and some reaching out to some of their clientele through the mayor's offices. Do you know how many villages that's happening in?
I'm not quite sure yet how many, the final number of the villages that will be able to be funded by that grant, but we supported them on that grant application. And so we do look forward to working with them to provide our residents the opportunity, especially those that do not have any internet or any computers at home, to be able to come to the village, at the community centers to avail themselves to this. So yes, we're working with them on this one. If we could get it out to 19, so much the better. But I believe this is just a pilot project that we're starting, so we're going to see how it goes.
Well, I definitely wish it great success. And part of what we've been finding out through this COVID-19, and I'm sure you've been seeing as well, is there's a great divide between, as you said, those that have internet and those that don't. It's complicating things for our schooling, it's complicating things for telehealth, it's complicating all kinds of things, that kind of divide. So I really applaud the mayors for stepping up in that and helping us get to that issue at that grassroots level, at the community level. The last question that I want to ask you about is the school grounds. So with the school grounds, are the mayor's offices still maintaining those school grounds right now?
No, Senator. We help maintain it as far as the leftover funds we had could go. But now it's under the GDOE.
I see.
But they still ask us, when they need our assistance, we still go and cut the grass, yes.
Okay, so before was some sort of relationship with GDOE, but now GDOE is basically taking that over completely?
Yes, because the funding was transferred over to GDOE in the last fiscal year.
Okay, well, I guess that eliminates the funding questions that I had that would go with that. But thank you for those answers, and I hope everybody is continuing to cope well with all the social distancing. I know that at that ground level, there's a lot of community outreach. There's a lot of interaction. As you said, they were out there as frontliners in many ways. And so we really appreciate them for that and for their continued work in carrying those duties out.
Thank you, and thank you for your support.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator
Sujus
Kelly.
Masi, Mr. Chair.
Senator Castro, you have any questions, sir?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank you, Director Sablan, for being here, and I want to thank the mayors and vice mayors for all they do throughout this pandemic. My family went out to the village of Barragata. I'm from Barragata, so they went out to the mayor's office and got tested. I don't recommend you video any of your family members as they're going through it, but I got to thank you for helping to administer that. So just Masi to the mayors for facilitating. I do want to highlight, Mr. Chairman, for the record, that this is one of the few times I've seen an instrumentality of the government come forward with some, I don't know if entrepreneurial will be a little too liberal in the use of that phrase, but with some ideas on how to generate revenue. And so I'll refer to page 8 and page 9 of your testimony. I appreciate that. I also want to follow up, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to state also for the record, based on your recommendation here, if I look through this, it would be page 5. What is page 5 of your written submission? I would support the EPA Recycling Revolving Fund being remitted to the Mayor's Council of Guam, just so you know that. On another note, Mr. Chairman, I do want to follow up, Director, on this AMIM. If there's any progress with the Association of Mariana Island Mayors and Council Members, and the reason why I think this is important is because AMIM, if I'm familiar with that, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's tremendous revenue generating potential there. I know our predecessor here in the legislature, Dr. Wanpat, had also attempted to ease trade restrictions, if you will, by revisiting some of the regulations proffered by the United States Department of Agriculture so that we can facilitate trade between our two jurisdictions. In the recent past, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've also continued those discussions between some members of this body and members of the CNMI legislature about building upon that. Perhaps a Center of Excellence for Breadfruit in Saipan and getting our trade here with sweet corn and some other products that we would consider, like the shrimp that the university is putting out, that we would consider to be an excellent product for trade. And that's important, I believe, because it generates revenue in addition to thinking about things like food security, economic self-sufficiency, sustenance, self-sustainability. I can go on. Could you speak briefly about AMIM and what it is that MCOG is doing to revisit that discussion? Is it part of your local budget? Is there federal funding to support that activity? And are there any dividends that have been reaped as a result of the discussions of the past that we can build upon today?
Yes, Senator. The Association of Mariana Island Mayors and Vice Mayors and elected council members, our last meeting was supposed to be in Saipan last November, but remember their typhoon and their devastation. They weren't ready to, host it because they were still in recovery mode. And so we have not actually met, but I know our current president of AMM, Mayor Kevin Susuiko, and the vice president, Mayor Apatang, David Apatang from Saipan, are in constant communication as to how we can get back up. Our meetings are in November. Well, hopefully we can get that meeting in November going. But yes, we always discuss how can we get all the cows that are on Tinian to be able to come to Guam. And I mean, everybody on Guam always looks for fresh beef, especially coming from Tinian. There's a place called Goat Island next to Tinian, and there's literally thousands of goats in that place. All it needs is somebody willing to be able to capture them, bring them here. But the obstacles we face, of course, is going through our Department of our Customs and Quarantine Agency and theirs to make sure that there is a working relationship and understanding or an MOA between the CNMI and Guam that these things can happen. You talk about the crops. We've been offering Rhoda an opportunity and to come to Guam to bring their sweet potatoes so that it's being commercialized here, it's being sold in the supermarkets, but they want on a more, like every weekend, be able to sell at the flea market. Dedo Mayor has offered them a space there, actually free of charge, if they want to come and start selling these products. And on our end, try to bring whatever we have to them. So yes, AMM is a very important entity. Although we were not able to meet last year, we still communicate. In fact, during this COVID thing, we try to help each other by giving each other whatever PPEs we had to give. And during their other storm in U2, we also assisted by sending them whatever goods we had that we collected from the 19 villages to be able to give them. So there is collaboration between the two entities. There is communication. There is camaraderie. There is it's just a great working relationship between all of them. And so we look forward to even making it a stronger organization and a bigger one.
Thank you, Mr. Director. And the reason why, Mr. Chairman, I bring that up is, aside from the camaraderie and the feel-good things that we walk away with, it's so relevant, Director, because our villages are setting up these festivals, and they're producing certain crops, and they're advocating and pushing it out there. And I think if we foster that development, like Governor Calvo in his term, and Speaker Wampat and other colleagues here, Senator Marsh, Senator Luis Borja Muña, I think that's a viable opportunity for generating revenue. So I thank you for that. But more to my point about your last statement, in the handling of abandoned vehicles, I know I've been in discussions with 2 other jurisdictions, and given my very little understanding of how that market works, I understand it's also an issue of bulk collection, bulk transfer, and bulk sale of metallic waste. And so I think that something at your level with the mayors can facilitate that. I'm sure if anybody here is to continue on in the 36, it might be something they'd be able to make a lot more viable for Guam, so that the mayors can generate that kind of revenue and do something good for the environment as well. I'll close with this, Mr. Chairman. I want to encourage the Mayor's Council to also look at the Marine Conservation Act. I've been in discussions with PD Mayor Jesse Allig and what the statute allows the mayors to do, these coastal villages, is to set into motion a strategic plan that, if done correctly, can allow you to subsume control certain administrative authorities to through rule and regulation to govern the use of these natural resources. And thus, I might suggest that if that is in fact the case, that you might be able to generate some revenue through the use of those natural resources. And so Dr. Jason Biggs at the University of Guam was the one to highlight that when we wrote the Marine Conservation Act together. Because if, for example, if there were discoveries in Homatic Bay, that corporate entities, as an example, Johnson & Johnson, if they were to utilize some of the discovery for an advancement of some cure of some sort, some scientific breakthrough, that the people of Homatic could benefit from the dividends produced by that discovery. And so I thank you again for being entrepreneurial, Mr. Sablan, in your approach. I thank your staff, the mayor's staff, the mayors and the vice mayors for being out there and doing all the work that other people would refuse to do. And I thank you again. Situs Masi.
Thank you, Senator Castro. Mr. Angel, just a simple question, in reference to the EPA that Senator Castro brought up. What is the amount that you would be looking at if you were to be appropriated a portion of the EPA's recycling revolving fund? What amount were you looking at?
Well, the last appropriation from this body in FY18 was $2.3 million.
Okay, are you hoping for the same amount?
We expended all of it except for $400,000. So we received from the governor's office the succeeding year 1.9 million. So 1.9 million seems to be a workable amount for.
All right, thank you. Senator Jim, do you have any questions, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the parks and the gyms and the facilities in the different villages, I know there back in 2018, Department of Interior did a grant for, I believe, 5.6 million. And that money, of course, went to Department of Parks and Recs. It's their responsibility. In that grant, it was for restrooms, like from down in Tumon, Ipaw Beach got 40,000, and Matapang Beach another 40,000, and in Aganya Park 40,000, Angel Santos Park 40,000 for the restrooms, Fish Eye another 40,000. And then it also broke it down for the parks, for the kids to play in the different parks. Like I see on the report, Dedido Woostic basketball court, 65,000. Jigo Community Park, 65,000. And Umatic, there was 1.1 million to construct a multi-purpose gym. And in Manila, a community baseball field at 370,000. For this money, it's supposed to be spent by September 30th, or in the end of the fiscal year, or 2022. So basically 2 years have gone by, and I'm wondering for the different mayors, for the different villages, and to include Paseo, Susanna Park, 145,000 for all these new lights. But I'm wondering if any of the mayors, or have you seen any of improvements on these baseball fields or your restrooms in your villages that we've seen this money being utilized for?
Well, because that funding is under the Department of Parks and Recreation, we really don't have any reports that they make. We do see some activities in the park restrooms, and I know that for a fact because then Director John Birch had called him and asked me whether or not they can direct people to go to the mayor's offices to use the restroom while they're renovating the ones in the parks. And this was just a couple weeks ago. As far as the 1.3 or 1.1 million for Yamatic, when the new administration came in, they also could just change the uses of those funds, which I believe they did. They transferred it to some other projects that they wanted done. They did give, in the prior administration, $100,000 to each of the, it's from Parks and Recreation, to each of the gyms, 7 gyms, to be repaired. Some work did get done in some of those gyms. I know the Jonia gym was repaired, although not totally completed to whatever they wanted done, Tamuning. Actually, all the gyms. The Astumbo gym was the only one that was hardened. The additional showers, and they hardened the facility so that we can use it for a tier 2 shelter after the storms. So that was the only one that was actually hardened. But I couldn't give you a final report on how much money was spent for those, because those came out of the Department of Parks and Recreation. We did not handle the accounting for that.
Okay, so I know we're going on to our 3rd director at Department of Parks and Recreation, but and Jess Garcia is the temporary one. We have to make an appointment with him, and just to see where this is, and I can get back to you. Maybe we can push, based on the mayor's needs there and different villages, to prioritize what money is left, because
I believe there's still money available in those funds, yes.
Okay. So I'd like to expedite it before the next election, just to get things done, to not make this too political, but to make it a priority. So let's utilize that funds, and I'd like to work with you to get that done. But thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Castro. In reference to the Parks and Recs, that was DOI money, and that was almost $6 million to take care of the parks. They never did any, I've never seen any contracts come out of that. And then the funding was changed to identify that if it wasn't built, they're not going to build new buildings, but I don't know. I'm just curious, where is those $6 million? Senator Mary Torres, Camacho Torres.
Mr. Chair, buenos dias, Mr. Santos, and I just want to start by thanking you and the mayors for all that you do to help our community, especially during this COVID pandemic. I know there's been a lot of needs, and the mayors have been very sensitive and attentive to their citizens. The question that I have is, in one of the documents that was submitted was your budget concerns. And in the budget concerns, there was an item, a request for lump sum payment for accrued unused annual leave. And the figure that you had in that initial document was $824,407. But then I see in your narrative today, where you discuss on page 1 about your appropriation being more in 2021 than fiscal year 2020, you indicate an increase of 1,289,000, and you attribute that to this lump sum payment of accrued annual leave up to 300 hours to employees. So the difference between what you initially said there and then what you put in your narrative today is about 464,000. So my first question is, why is there such a big difference in what you said your initial request for lump sum is and then what you're stating today?
The request for lump sum is still the same amount, for $824,407,000. The difference is we included earlier when I was testifying the $240,000, $20,000 for each center, and the $25,000 for the mayoral inauguration. We're no longer requesting for the $240,000 because we got the $300,000 from the Office of the Governor for 15 centers, the 3 senior centers and the 12 senior centers and the 3 adult daycare centers. And then the $100,000 increase that we requested for each of those other funds, I just testified that it's up to this body. We can live with the status quo of what was appropriated since last year. So that increase is actually, a majority of that is for that lump sum.
Okay, but it's not the 1.2 because I read it literally to be
if you
a
add
justification.
Those other ones, then you will come up to that amount.
So then that's the difference.
Right.
But does the Mayor's Council, knowing that they're going to end their term every 4 years, do you not make an effort to have people take leave? Like who would be the people that would be eligible for this accrued leave? Is it the mayors themselves or classified employees, or who is it that everyone? Mm-hmm. And so throughout the term, there's no effort to, as a cost-cutting measure, have them take their leave?
Well, many of them do take leave, for other stuff, but Senator, I'd just like to tell you that even on weekends, these employees work, so when one person takes leave, it affects almost the entire, remember there's only 5 of them that are maintenance people, and the gym people. So even though they make an effort to try to make these people take their leave, many of them over the years have accrued much more than the 320 hours. And so even if they took 100, like myself, and if I took 200 hours of leave, I would still have more than 320 hours left. And so, yes, we try to tell our employees, even the mayors themselves, which mayor goes on extended leave? None of them do unless it's for medical. And so when they end their term, as we have done every 4 years prior, they are paid for this. In fact, once upon a time, they were paid the entire amount of
Right,
leave they
when it
had.
wasn't
It was
capped,
not
right.
limited to 320.
Right, right. I
Yeah,
understand
so
that.
even if we paid them the 320 in January, many of them will still have a lot of leave left over. And to send them on a vacation or tell them to please take leave, although many of them probably want to do it, it just hampers the productivity and the work of the mayor's offices.
Yeah, you're aware that this is something that was addressed even in our body where we weren't,
Yes,
we're
I
no
understand,
longer.
fully
So,
understand.
and for that same reason that it tends to be a
I
big
mean,
price
it's something
tag
that could
at
be
the,
addressed also if it's for the mayors and the vice mayors, but I know for the employees who probably find some other way to.
okay. No, I just wanted to clarify the discrepancy because the way that it read and then that, it looked like it was a difference of, and so just
No, that was
from
the
the plain
total.
read. Okay.
Yeah, okay,
All right,
yes.
thank you.
Okay.
Senator Sabina Paris. Thank you, Senators.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Mr. Sablan.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you for taking the time out to prepare the statement and all the work that you're doing in the villages and amongst the mayors. So I have a couple of questions here. I mean, considering that we're dealing with leaner times in government, you know, Tourist Attraction Fund, there's a downturn in that, and some of your funding comes from it. I know the speaker had asked the question earlier, but I just wanted to just clarify, you know, has the Mayor's Council developed contingency plans for additional cost savings or additional revenue sources to counter these reductions that we're seeing?
As I mentioned earlier, we are actively looking into grants and, in fact, working with other agencies that are applying for grants to include us in their grant application as far as maybe funding some of our personnel or funding some of our activities so that it doesn't have to come out of the Mayor's Council of Guam budget. So yes, we are looking at that. We are looking also at opportunities to cut down on our operational costs by let's say take 1 day a week and just combine 3 or 4 villages staff and just take a village and wipe out whatever it is that they have to do in that village, whether it needs to cut the grass or to help with the schools or for beautification. I mean, putting 15 people together and working together certainly would do a whole lot more than just 5 people. So we're looking at that, is trying to see whether we can, every other month, just take 3 or 4 groups of staff and send them to the village that needs them. And then they can reciprocate by coming back the next time around that they need help, they would come and assist. So yes, we are looking ways to cutting down and looking at ways that should the need arise that we're not going to get. And we're fully aware that the way the budget is this year, nobody knows what's available. And so that's why I offered some of those ideas of trying to see how we can raise some revenues as well. But yes, our only probably big help is that we're also working with the Department of Labor. They're also getting grants for the dislocated workers. And they have called us and asked whether we would be willing to take these workers to help with clerical work in the offices or filing or maintaining the senior centers or helping distribute the food. And I said, certainly we do. So it's only a 6-month program, but it's, you know, it's a 6-month program where they can help us. And it's not money that has to come out of our appropriation or even from the TAF or the highway fund or from the general fund. It's coming from the federal till. So to answer your question simply, is yes.
That's great to hear. That was leading into my second question, possibly about consolidating actually purchases and of goods and services. So I know in the testimony that you provided that you basically you allocate what comes in through like limited gaming fund
Yes.
based on the need or the street development fund. But I was thinking, you know, has the Mayor's Council actually discussed about perhaps consolidating purchases and services so that they can get the best for their money?
We have looked at ideas and yes, like purchasing chairs, for example. that are used by all the villages, purchasing canopies that are used by all the villages. We have. The only thing is that whenever we go over the 25, now it's $25,000 threshold, it would have to go through GSA. And not to put any blame on or cast GSA in any negative light, but when it goes through them, it takes quite a while before we're going to be able to get something out. And you know, these mayors are adamant when they want something. They say, you know, Angel, I need this right away. So it's going to save us money by combining it to probably get a better deal. But would getting it in 30 days be suffice, or we wait for 6 months for it to get to us? So those are kind of questions that we come. But yes, we do. If we can combine a couple of villages together where we don't go over the 25,000, we do it.
So that's something GSA has told me about, is their planned procurement. And so during the budget time, they normally send out a circular to all the agencies so that they can consolidate these purchases. So I guess to kind of further that, I would like to recommend that, you know, maybe putting a list together ahead of time and, you know, maybe discussing, initiating the dialogue with GSA.
Yeah. The GSA does bulk buying, and we do take advantage of that as well. You know, we do get items from them. It's just that, take toilet tissue, for example. Maybe the toilet tissue the GSA gets at a very, very cheap price, it's not usually the kind of quality toilet tissue that we can put at a senior center. It's a toilet tissue that cannot rip apart or something where the seniors have a hard time, you know, using it. Or it's toilet tissue that plugs up our toilets and our pipelines. So we just go out and get the ones that, you know, that are better quality. But I can't blame GSA. I mean, if that's what they get for the lowest price and they give it out, we do take some of that, but at many times we are not able to use them. We have to replace them with something else.
So I just want to bring up also, since we're on the procurement issue, there was an audit that was done, I believe, in 2018, and regarding training for procurement officials within government.
Yes.
This was actually April 2019. And this is regards to Public Law 32-131. And basically requires that all government Guam personnel that's responsible for procuring goods and services and construction to receive training and continuing education through GCC. And so what they found was a lot of the government agencies were not in compliance. And this was, I believe, it was implemented as far back as 2016. So to your knowledge, has there been an increase in procuring officials within Mayor's Council to take these courses at GCC? I believe they're starting it really soon.
Yes. Every time they have a session, we do send our personnel to those procurement training. The only thing is we're only limited to five seats, so we can't send more than 5 at one time, even though we want to get them all trained. So you know, and it just depends on when they offer the procurement 1, procurement 2, you know, the modules as they go up. But we've had the majority of our AAs go through that procurement module 1 already.
So the requirement, though, is that there should be all the way up to procurement module 4?
Yes, yes. It's just that we want everybody to go to the 1 first before they go up. Because, you know, like I said, we're only limited to 5. So I wish we could. We've already asked GCC whether they can just take all our 19 AAs at one time, but there are also other agencies and other entities that have to take the training. So finding a teacher for the course for just one agency is difficult because they have to offer to us. But every time they have it open, we do send our people.
So that could actually, the reason why I'm bringing this up is could actually ease the bottleneck with procurement if they're trained fully through all 4 modules. So if one passes the module 1, you know, it's highly recommended that they continue on the progress.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. So another thing was, as far as appropriations from 2020, are you up to date as far as allotments go?
Well, we're one of the few agencies that are fortunate enough that we're not under the allotment schedule. of BBMR, we get our entire allotment at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Okay. And then can you also clarify whether you got CARES funding to pay for the efforts that you've done to help people, our people?
When I saw the submission to the legislature from the governor of the different agencies and entities that were given funding from CARES, I saw that the Mayor's Council of Guam was not there. So I immediately called the front office and I spoke with then Deputy Chief of Staff John Calvo, and I said, how come the Mayor's Council of Guam was not included? You know we're spending money. He goes, BBMR should have reached out to you guys and asked you for your input. Well, apparently they never reached out to us to ask us for our input. The only time they reached out to us to ask us for our input was the day they submitted the funding, their budget to the legislature. So we immediately put our funding request together. And that was, I believe, March 5th, where they asked us for our input, and we gave it to them on March 6th, and they delivered that budget to the legislature on March 5th. But as I explained earlier, the biggest amount of that request is for personnel for the hazardous pay. We were told by John Calvo that we don't have to worry about that portion of the expenditure because that's covered under the public health part of the grant that they're giving out. So we have to worry only about providing for the PPEs, the fuel that we use, the mileage that our employees use for delivering food that use their private vehicle, and for the retrofitting of our offices to include the sneeze guards and opening smaller windows and openings on the doors. So that amounts to a little over $300,000. So that one we're working with the front office to get reimbursement for that.
Okay, because on the Exhibit A that I received, there was $1.3 million from the CARES budget. Is that
That's what we
accurate?
requested, but we were not given.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what else. So the other thing is, as far as breakdowns, I don't know if you have it in the testimony. I wasn't able to find it, but if you can provide breakdowns for the following, maybe not at this time, but if you have it, that's great. Let's see, one is the President's Contingency Fund, the island-wide village beautification projects, and then I think that's it. And then also for the limited gaming fund, how will you apply these funds for this fiscal year?
As I mentioned, we did not put a figure because that figure comes from it's fluid. It just really depends on how much of those taxes are collected every year. I believe this year we're even going to get less than we received last year because, the bingo halls are closed, the game rooms are closed, and so revenues from there are not going to be coming in.
The other thing I want to share with you is that there's a bill that I introduced. It's a zero waste fund. It's basically updating the recycling revolving fund, and I'll present that to the Mayor's Council. But there are opportunities for the mayors. The idea is we're transitioning from recycling to more of a localized economy, circular economy, but we're still keeping the priorities for the recycling revolving fund, getting rid of the cars, getting rid of all the priorities on the list. But there's opportunities for also revenue for the mayors. So I'll be happy to discuss that with the Mayor's Council.
And we look forward to taking a look at it, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Sablan.
Thank you,
Masi.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Sabina Perez. Senator Teresa Lai, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Sablan, Jesus Masi, for being here and for all the input from all the mayors and, of course, your work through this emergency. Very much appreciated. I very much appreciate the mayors communicating with all of us, their needs, and actually, that they were going out there, especially providing food to the Manamko, things like that. You make all of us feel a little bit better that your eyes are on it and your work is, that kind of work is being done. I think it caught us all pretty much off guard so I'm very happy. Thank you.
That's why many of our employees can't take leave, even though they have a lot of leave.
Yes, I understand. And so along that line, I wanted to ask, so you submitted a request after BBMR submitted their CARES budget to us. You submitted a request for 1.3 million, and some of it was to kind of retrofit the offices to make them safer.
Yes.
But you also, there was also personnel costs, of course. And you said that public health is going to cover about $1 million of that for hazardous pay?
Whatever is spent from the time COVID started, governor's executive order to whenever it ends, she lifts it, yes, it will be covered under public health.
Okay. And then you said you have about 50,000 in 2019 lapses, or was that 2020?
I'll get you a truer figure, or more exact figure, and we'll send that your way.
All right. Was that for 2020?
It has to be for FY19 because
19,
2020
okay.
is still active.
All right. And did you have prior year obligations that are still unpaid right now?
We do every once in a while. A vendor that has not brought in their receipt from some while ago finally decides to bring it, and yes, we still do pay it.
But what about those that have submitted already? Those are all taken care of?
Excuse me.
Any vendor that already submitted has been taken care of?
Yes, we whatever expenditure was in a prior year, we used the prior year funding to take care of that.
All right.
Yes.
And have you already submitted the financial statements to OPA or Department of Administration for, the Guam overall audit? I think they ask all the agencies to submit their own financial statements.
We are audited annually by OPA, and we do submit our quarterly reports to both this body and to OPA and to the governor's office. So in that sense, yes, we do submit our statements.
Okay. All right. And so then we know that the senior centers will continue to be operated by the mayor's council.
Like I said, we haven't been informed by public
Oh.
health that they are going to look for another vendor. I'm sure at this late in the game that we're going to continue beyond
All right.
September 30.
And your a separate funding than what we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
But
Although
that,
I did include the funding there just to show you what we're getting
yes,
from them.
I
Yes.
appreciate that. Thank
Yes.
you, your openness. What about, is there any retrofitting of these senior centers that's being planned? Are you the one planning
We're working on,
how we're going to open
actually,
that?
we're working on quite a few centers right now. The Sinahanya Center has been worked on now. The adult daycare, we call dementia in Jigo, is almost done. Dementia, the Machechi Community Center is almost done. They're working on in Narahan. Agate, I think they just started. Tamuning just completed their roof repairs and things like that. So
Okay, but are you talking about regular repairs? I'm asking, those are regular repairs, right? That you got that
these
money
are
from the
repairs
governor?
that should have been done a while back.
But what
yes.
about to make them, I guess, COVID
social
COVID friendly?
distancing?
Yes, the social
Yes.
distancing, those types of concerns.
Senator, we're having a meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
With all of the mayors that have the senior centers. We're going to sit down tomorrow at 11 o'clock at the DEDO, because eventually we're going to open these facilities.
Yes.
And we just want to make sure that, we are able to accommodate as many of the seniors as we can. Because a lot of them are already calling, when am I going to go back and play bingo, or when am I going to go back and meet my friends and things like that.
Yes.
So it's difficult, some centers they're not all the same in size. You've got Aganya Heights, that's not very big. It's not even half of this
Yes.
hall right here. And to put all of them in there, what people are talking about, well, we'll make some come on Mondays, we'll make some come on Tuesdays. I mean, or it's not going to work that way. So we're just going to find some way to make sure we accommodate as much of them as we
Okay, well,
can.
I appreciate that. I'm worried that that's going to take some money to fix them up, or, bump them out, expand them a little bit, or whatever you're going to do, get more personnel and divide them up even. I don't know, but
Well,
I am
we're
concerned.
not using all of the 300,000, and some of the repairs that are done are actually way below that. So yeah, we still have
good.
the money available.
Oh, good. That's great to know. Just keep us updated on that then, and how soon you might be able to open those. And then the governor, so DOE received some money for, technology to make, virtual education. And so the governor's office also received about 12 million of that. and they said they were going to work, with the villages and get this out into the villages. And then we also heard from, behavioral health saying they're going to get stuff out. And I think one of my colleagues asked this question already, but I just wanted to confirm if you are in actual discussions about this, if you've got concrete plans, or if we're looking like months down the road for this to be implemented.
Well, behavioral wealth, we are already in active discussion. In fact, ready to go. I did hear about the 12 million, and actually the Office of Public Defender called me up the other day because, Mr. Sablan, I'm so happy that you guys are getting $12 million to put all these computers and stuff and internet into your villages. I said, well, thank you for letting me know, but you're the first one to tell me about it. That's why I don't think all of it is going. I know the governor's office is going to put some aside for the mayor's offices, but I don't think the entire.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to boost up the village. So they haven't said exactly, where or when, but that's what I was wondering if you knew. Okay. What about, so the food assistance that's been being passed out, I know these are by grants and different other funding, but you have been the mayors have been very instrumental in this work. And I wanted to know, and this goes together with housing assistance. And I know that I've heard some of the mayors on the radio, and I just wanted to know what is the overall sense of the mayors regarding, do we need additional food assistance? I know some of it's been, scaled down because of just the funding sources. When they change, we adopt. But do you think the people are in need of additional food assistance right now? That if we're not going to get it through federal funds, that we have to come up with it locally? And the same thing with housing. I know that there's a bunch of, there's quite a bit of money that was supposed to be set aside from Congress going to GURA, Guam Housing, for housing assistance. The Homeless Coalition works with that and trying to place people. But I'm just wondering if, from the mayor's perspective, this is adequate, or, what other thoughts you might have on that type of assistance?
As far as for feeding the Manamco,
Well, more than the Manamco, even all the others in the villages at this point that are unemployed.
well, the feeding the others in the villages is actually money that is given to public health, and I think they gave it to GDOE to be able to be the ones to distribute this on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis. So we do assist there. I mean, the obvious answer is yes, you see the long lines every time there's a scheduled distribution of food. This week, all of the villages are distributing boxes of fruit. Every one of them is getting 240 boxes of fruit, and maybe we don't have to give them as much fruit. Maybe we need to give them more staples, like But yes, they still need additional food. The fruits, I think, has just been, there's over an abundance of fruits. I mean, some of the people won't even take it anymore because they're over appled and over oranged, at this point. But they'll still take the rice, they'll still take the canned beef and chicken. But they ask us, why do you guys give us kidney beans and pinto beans and things like that? What do we do with this? I said, that's what they gave us to give you, so that's what we're giving you. But I think if we can localize it maybe more, get vegetables from our farmers and fruits from our farmers here, and then give it out, maybe that's a better way of spending that money than to just get thousands and thousands of boxes of oranges and apples that I can bet you probably most of them have gone to waste already because they're not being eaten. There's someone, uncle, that, not being, but they tell us, why are you giving us this? I don't have teeth. So I think it was just localize it and maybe make it more so that our people can really take advantage and use it. But as far as should we have more food, of course we should have more food, yes.
Thanks again for all the work, you and all the mayors and their staff. I mean, we couldn't have got through this. It's so very clear to me without all of you. Yes. My final question is just going back to this abandoned vehicles. I know we had this roundtable with the EPA at one point, remember? And so you said at one point that the VIN numbers have been removed.
They're not all removed, but there's some where they try their very best to make it so it's not legible.
Okay.
But there's some ways, and then, I mean, all of them don't have license plates. You know, somebody takes those and they take the tires,
Right.
some vehicles, to be honest, are not even recognizable anymore of what make or model they are. That's how rusted out they are, how cannibalized they are. But going back to the Mr. Chairman's, I mean, when we try to find them, they say, well, I already paid you guys. I pay every year when I register my vehicle. I paid you guys to be able to remove that vehicle.
Oh, yes, but
Yeah.
that's,
So,
that's still not allowed. I mean, so we should be able to cite those. And so we asked that at the round table, and EPA claims, yes, we should be able to cite them. And it's really what seemed to me, I know at the time they wanted to have access to the motor vehicle or the ID, read-only access to the
you know what's that
motor
going to do? So
vehicle
instead
ID.
of them leaving it on the side of the road, they're going to leave it deeper in the jungle.
Say that again?
Instead of them leaving it on the side of the road, like the road Senator Moon and I pass by every day, they're going to put it deeper in the jungle where we can't find it
Oh, I
or
see.
see it.
Well, what I've been noticing lately is they put it on the side of the road one day. Next day, it's pretty much stripped. The next day, it's even more stripped, more than you could believe, and it just continues to grow. And I keep thinking, well, on day one, we should be able to get those VIN numbers, hopefully. I mean, even if we need a task force all around the island to just do that, just get the VIN numbers off these vehicles that are
Well,
in
we've
plain
tried to
sight.
actually ask the police department to help us because in many cases, those that are just parked on the side of the road because it's just stopped running or ran out of gas or something happened to it, GPD actually takes the plate. And when we ask them, well, can you do something where if you take the plate, you are able to cite these people for, like
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman says, for littering or for just nuisance on the road. But when we come, there is no more plate for us to identify the vehicle. But I know GPD takes those plates.
All right, I guess maybe we'll do that again in another day, but I think we should get to the bottom of why we can't get the VIN numbers off of these cars. If they remove them later, then, no problem. But if they remain there over, 3 days, then that's it. It should be taken care of. And maybe, I just want to make sure that the mayors have the authority to issue the citations as they're supposed to. And I know we've, gone back and forth on this, whether that citation authority, whether, you believe it's good enough, and then the court cases, what's happened with them, different things.
Maybe another idea is instead of waiting for us to come pick up the car and us to be charged $150 from the recycling center to turn in that car, maybe we just tell the owner, if you don't want your car anymore, you go to the recycling center, turn it in, and they pay you the $150.
They get paid $150? Oh, I see. Maybe that will work. I don't
Maybe
know,
that
but we'll
way
talk
you're not
about
going to
it.
find them abandoned on the side of the road anymore.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for all your work. Situs Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. And on that same note, like I mentioned, the $1,000 littering, we can work on this later, but come up with a task force. All they do is drive around, tag a vehicle. It's there 24 hours. They're impounded. The owner will pay for the impoundment, towing, littering, everything, and then you watch, it'll stop. It'll stop real fast. Within 1 year, I'll bet you, we won't find a vehicle out there unless they burn it.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Therese, you have one more?
I forgot one question. This was, in your testimony, you talked about FEMA might be able to give you some money to repair from old typhoon damage to some of the buildings. But then you talked about next year we would have to insure that. And the insurance costs, you say, $84,000, but the repair cost is $265, and it seems like the insurance cost is very high. That's an annual cost?
Annual premium.
And that's only for the repaired
For
portions.
those that were repaired by FEMA, that FEMA gave a funding for to repair.
So you already ran out for like a
Yeah, which
bidding?
an estimate, but even at that, Senator, we asked for some quotes and some insurance companies, No, we don't even want to insure your building.
It
you
just
know.
seems exorbitant to me, and I'm just wondering if we could get
So they
some-
charge us an exorbitant premium because they know it's,
I see. Okay,
we're at their mercy.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator Tello, do you have any questions, ma'am? You'll be the last one.
Well, now I know how Louise feels, Mr. Chair. But it doesn't stop me from thanking you so much, Angel, for all the
They
hard
save
work
the
you're
best
doing.
for last.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Don't get me to start singing that song right now, because I love that song. But please extend my Dunkalusi Dusmasi to all the mayors out there that have been working tirelessly during this crisis and passing out food, distributing food, and caring for those who are scared, worried about this coronavirus. I mean, they stepped up to the plate. They are truly frontliners, and I please extend my Dunkalusi Dusmasi to them. Most of all the questions were asked, especially the abandoned vehicles. I knew Senator Tristelari was probably going to ask this way of investigating when cars are on the side of the road, and it's so true. That was the one thing I wanted to bring up. There's a way to investigate it, and that puts me into the illegal dumping scenario. Same thing there. I remember during the last administration, what they did literally is go out to the jungles and open these bags that were dumped in the jungle to find paper of identification, and went after them, and sought, fines and fees for them. So I think that's the next thing that we need to do, is to come up with some kind of legislation that is stronger to deter people from doing this on both sides of the vehicle, as well as illegal dumping too as well. But I guess the last thing I would talk to you about is just one quick question on 2020 budget, on your the passage of the budget bill last year. There's a section that says Tourist Attraction Fund $295,855. It was last year. And then, of course, if you go further on the next page, on page 100, it says the island beautification was 400 from the TAF. So my question to you is, Angel, the tourist attraction fund, that was the 295,855, what was that for?
That's for operations.
Just operations?
That's part of the 10 million for operations and personnel.
In your office, right?
Yes.
Administrative operation. Okay, so you know about what's happening with TAF. So
Yeah, and
know,
I mentioned
okay,
it last
yeah.
year that we get
And-
castigated because
Right.
why are we paying our personnel out of tourist attraction money?
yeah, something's going to get cut. So, and the last question I have, Mr. Chair, thank you again for the opportunity to save the best for last. Liberation.
Yes, ma'am.
What are you guys going to do this year? I had a phone call by the territorial band wanting so much to celebrate liberation this year somehow, and I recommend doing it virtual. I mean, going out and videotaping maybe with the group in from the plaza, but what is the Mayor's Council going to do this year or at all for liberation?
We will do something.
You haven't
And
planned anything yet?
I don't want to let the cat out of the bag right now, but once we put it together and it's all approved and at our July 1st meeting,
Okay.
we'll let you all know. Yes, it'll be something virtual, but it'll be something very meaningful too, so that people can enjoy.
Very good. I know you won't let, the mayor's office would not let the people of Guam down in celebrating something so
There was even, we
important.
just talked at our also meeting this morning about using your property across the street, this body's property, to remember those that have fallen, our people that have fallen in the war, the service people that have fallen during the war, because, they bombed the cathedral
Yeah.
early in that war. So we're thinking of either solar lights or path lights to represent one of each of those people that we're going to light up all over Skinner Plaza.
I think you're letting the
And
cat
it's
out of the
gonna be
bag already.
Something that will, that's not the
Some of
July
the stuff,
21st.
yeah.
This is something that we want to do during the entire month, so just to remember our people.
So we
Yeah.
can tell everybody to stay tuned. Something great's coming up for liberation this year.
And we're also trying to work with the National Park Service. They weren't able to do their Memorial Day this year, and so we're going to see whether we can do a Liberation Memorial this year.
Well, that'd be great.
Yes.
Thank you so much again for all you do for all the mayors, Angel. I know that you're you're a pillar over there for their help. Every time they run into problems, they seek your assistance. So I greatly appreciate all that you're doing down there yourself.
Well,
Thank you so much.
I mean, there are a bunch of hardworking mayors and vice mayors and staff, and I just try to make it easier for them by trying to provide them whatever I can do for them.
Sijus Masi.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Tello. That being, we have had all the senators present ask the questions. Mr. Sablan, the committee will conclude the budget hearing on the Mayor's Council on Bill 282-35 LS. The committee will continue to receive testimony for the next few days. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. Augustine at gmail.com. Sijus Masi for your attendance and participating in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching. The budget hearing on Bill 282-35 LS relative to the Mayor's Council is now adjourned at 3:05. Thank you and have a nice day. My colleagues, we're